subscribe.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Explore the Unsolved with Melissa, as we dig into some of the most perplexing true crime mysteries that refuse to give us the answers. Today, we're diving into one of California's most eeriest cold cases, the disappearance and tragic deaths of the Yuba County Five. The case has often been compared to Rosa's Totova Pass incident, a group of five young men who, on one cold night in February 1978, inextricably veered off the path into the mountains. Only some of them were found, leaving behind the chilling questions that haunt us to this day. So buckle in as we unravel the facts, theories, and enduring mysteries of the Yuba County Five. Let's get started with the five men involved in this case. They were all young men from Yuba County, California, known to be close friends. They often spent time together, bonding over sports and other group activities. Each one of them either had a mild intellectual difficulty, disability, or a physical condition or psychotic condition, though they were largely well adjusted and capable in their daily lives. All of them had jobs, and many of them even were able to make a little bit of money. And their names were Gerald, Gary Dale Mathias, who was 25 years old, Jackie Jack Hewitt Jr., at 24 years old, Theodore Ted Wheeler, at 32 years old, Jack Antoine Madruga, age 30, and William Bill Sterling at age 28. On the night February 24th, 1978, the French drove down to California State University in Chico to watch a basketball game, and they planned to return home immediately after. And they were due to play in their own tournament the following day, but they never returned. The next day, their families were alarmed when no sign of them, and panic set in as the hours dragged on. Immediately after, missing persons reports were filed on the next to the police. And at first, the police were hesitant as they were grown men, and people thought they would eventually return home. The family were adamant that something had to have happened to them. When investigators started looking, they didn't have to wait long to find their first major clue and break in the case. Jack McGruger's car, a 1969 turquoise blue Mercury Montego, was discovered the next day, abandoned in the remote area of Loomis National Forest. Now let's take a moment to appreciate how strange this was. This spot was nearly 70 miles away from the route they should have taken back home, and it was up a rough part of the mountain road with a little in the way of a clear paths, and nothing that could have been mistaken for the main road. Now, this is actually very important to know. Jack loved this car. This car was everything to him, and this was his car. He had his own driver's license, which was very important and special to him that he was able to drive. He never let anyone else drive this car. And to make things even more weirder, Jack hated the outdoors. He didn't like camping at all or being out in the cold. So why would he drive this road if he hated the outdoors and hated camping and knew this was a sketchy part not to be in, that they shouldn't be here? This did not add up with what investigators add up according to his family of who Jack was. And there's no evidence that anyone else was sitting in the car. So we should assume he was driving it up the mountains. But why? So this is one question that began to pop up. Why would Jack drive his car up the mountains? Now, here's when things get even more eerie. The car was stuck in snow, but only lightly. Nothing that would have been impossible to get out, especially for Jack Madruga, who knew his car and had a reputation of being a careful driver. In fact, the car was in good working order. It still had the gas tank at a quarter tank, so they still had plenty of gas. And it wasn't damaged, and the keys weren't far away. So why did they leave it? And why would they have come up this far to mountains to begin with? They didn't know anyone who lived in the area, and no known associates were nearby, including friends, family, maybe a neighbor, maybe neighbors, maybe even an old classmate. So this was a perplexing question for the family. Despite the intensity of the search, weeks passed with no sign of the men. Now, remember, a small storm had hit the mountain, so it was hard to look for anything. So they couldn't really dig further. So they tried their best to look further up the mountain, but due to the weather and snow drifts that were happening and due to the conditions of the road, it was harder for investigators, the dogs, search teams, and the family members to look for the men. So while they tried, they couldn't really move up the mountain, or so to speak. Finally, in June, after the snow had start to melt in the mountains, the answers, well, partially as they were came to light. In a trailer 20 miles away from the car, sadly, the body of Ted Wheeler was discovered by motorcyclists passing through the area. Ted's death, well, it led more questions than answers. He appeared to have been survived for as long as 13 weeks after disappearance. The trailer was well stocked in canned food, yet Ted died of starvation and exposure. Now, this is often debated, but according to the forensics who arrived, it looked like he may have been tortured as well. But once again, that's speculation a little bit, so let's leave it at that. His feet were so badly frostbitten, and he was wrapped in blankets. But this was done meticulously. Like, imagine a mummy being mummified. This is what it looked like. Almost like maybe like a ritual to keep his body warm, as if he was trying to stay warm. Another thing that was left behind at the trailer was there was a bunch of small lockers around. And they also contained dehydrated foods and fruit and vegetables. This would have kept Jack alive, or this would have kept Ted alive for at least a couple of months, weeks, even years, even. But yet none of it was touched. The canned food was eaten, mostly by him, maybe possibly, or maybe even by the other men, but none. So why didn't he touch the dehydrated food? Now this is where things get weird. A special pocket knife was found, but this pocket knife was only used by members of the military. And as at this point, only two of the men been in the military. Ted was now one of them. This could have been either Gary or possibly another individual. Now it's possible that Gary could have taught, or the other man could have taught Ted how to use this knife, but it's highly unlikely. But why was that he did not touch the dehydrated food, yet the can openers were opened? That doesn't make any sense. To make things even more weirder, they found a propane tank that could have kept Ted warm, yet it was never used, along with old books, furniture, wood, mattress. Other items were found in this trailer or around the surrounding area of the trailer that could have kept Ted warm, yet none of it was touched. So why? This is the begging question. Around the trailer, a few days later, bodies of Jack Hewitt, Burl Sterling, and Jack Madruga were found. Those scavenging animals had been scattered in their remains. They were located between the car and the trailer, almost as they tried but failed to reach for help. Now, unfortunately, I'm going to make this a really tragic case. One of the boys' bodies was found by their own father. And according to a family member, he was yelling and crying as he promised his son he was going to find him. So we can only imagine how heartbreaking this was, because he swore on the day he went missing, he would find his son. We can only imagine the heartbreak that this would have been. Other family members, especially their mothers and older siblings, wanted to go down to the coroner to say their final goodbyes, only to be worded off not to, as there wasn't much left of them. So, and while they were found decomposed, the weirdest thing was is that the cause of death was determined to possibly be hypothermia. But my theory is that there may have been another factor to play. Because of decomposing, that possibly meant that the true cause of death for the three other men, and possibly even Ted, remains a mystery, because some another factor could have played. If they were decomposing, that could have hit the fact that they were strangled. Maybe they were beaten, trampled to death even. But due to the decomposure, that possibly made it hard to determine. So hypothermia may have been the main factor. Another factor could have been hidden away due to the state of the bodies. So let's look at the mystery that is Gary Mathias. Gary is perhaps the most mysterious figure in this case. His shoes were left in the trailer that Ted had been was found in, yet his own shoes were missing. That's weird. And Matthias was the only one in the group that had a history of mental illness, specifically schizophrenia, and he relied on heavily medication to stay stable. And and he also had a history with drugs. Because of this, he was discharged from the military, but was still receiving disability money from them. So he was still right, and he had a job working landscaping at his stepfather's company. And after taking medicine, he worked through the drug and issues. And while he was still on, once again, schizophrenic, he was okay. So his schizophrenia would only act up if he was in a very stressful situation. This is important to remember. His schizophrenia would only get worse if he was in a very stressful situation or high levels of stress. That could have triggered it. But if he was medicated, it was fine as long as he took his medicine. He wasn't with the group when they were found, but he also couldn't survive without his medicine, especially in those heart conditions. So where'd he go? Where is he? They searched for days after and did not find Gary. They assume maybe he went further up and his body was up further up the mountain. Maybe he fell off a cliff. Maybe he drowned in the river. Maybe he's further downstream where the water's more deeper. At this point, we don't really know what could have happened to Gary. And over the years, numerous theories have circulated about what could have happened to the Yuba County Five. The theories have ranged from simple disorientation to sinister foul play. Here are some of the key possibilities, and after, I want to tell you my own theory of what I think happened and what I think could truly be the one to solve this case. Let's look at the first theory, which is basically the simplest one. Theory 1, lost in the snow. One possibility is that they became disoriented after taking a wrong turn and ended up lost. The heavy snowfall, freezing temperatures, they could have quickly put themselves in a state of desperation and making their survival extremely difficult. Theory 2, around the corner syndrome. There's also the idea of around the corner syndrome, where they might have kept following up what they thought was a road or vehicle or tracks once they were up there, but they may have felt too far gone to turn back. Once again, when you have disabilities and mental illness, this could make a little bit of sense. Number 3, foul play. And this is one that has actually been put forward by several of the family members. Family members have speculated about foul play. Some think perhaps someone was involved and maybe they met a stranger along the way or encountered a threat that forced them to head into the mountains. There are some reports that possibly something happened at the basketball game where they were at. Maybe they witnessed something, a fight, maybe a situation that they weren't supposed to see or didn't know they have seen. And that's what things got worse. Now, this is important to remember. I didn't mention this before. Before they went on the road to go home, they were actually spotted at a local gas station to get some snacks. And the snack bars were found in the car, all of them unwrapped. So they obviously have eaten snacks. So did they witness something at the gas station? Did they witness something on the way to the car back from the gas station? So there was two windows of opportunity where the boys could have witnessed something from a stranger and unwilling, knowingly or unknowingly. And that's when things got worse when they began to drive back home. It could have been followed. Now let's look at theory 4, theory Matthias's influence. Some theorize the focus on Matthias. Perhaps he led the group off course due to a psychotic episode or fear the sun was following them. It was in a 5 hour straight, the group's fate may have taken a dark turn. Now, I'm actually going to add on to this theory because this actually is my theory. My theory is, unfortunately, that I do think Gary was involved. And while I do believe this theory, I want to go back to it after I go over the last theory. The Joseph Stones incident. There's the strange account from Joseph Jones, a man who reported seeing people near the car the night the men were missing. He claimed to have seen headlights and a group of people, though. Though his story varied and it was harder to confirm. If true, who were these people? Did the Jones really see the Yuba County Five that night? Well, there might be an explanation to Theory 5. According to Joseph Jones, he suffered a heart attack the night that night, and that he also one of the people he saw in the car was a woman and a baby. And according to a Reddit thread from a person who claims to be close friends with one of the boy's brothers, baby blankets were found in the car. So if these two theories are correct, that there's big baby blankets in the car and that a pregnant woman was with them, maybe there is a connection. Joseph also claims a pickup truck was with them. Now, despite the fact that Joseph Stone's story has varied from time to time, the one thing he was able to prove through a doctor and medical records that he did suffer this heart attack that night. Records confirm he had a heart attack. But is it possible that during his state of of his heart attack that he missed maybe saying things and maybe he didn't really see the Yuba County Five. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. We don't know. Because I never had a heart attack before. I don't know if any of you guys have a heart attack. Maybe you have. And maybe you do get confused afterwards. Because for me, it seems weird that he would have a heart attack and be fine and then go back. Like he literally walked back to his cabin to relax. That's the one part of the case that really doesn't make sense. Maybe Joseph's story is true, and maybe he is a little foggy from the medical episode that he had. We don't know. I'm not Joseph Jones. Maybe he's telling the truth. Maybe he isn't. So let's talk about my own theory. My own theory is that I do think, unfortunately, that Gary Mathias is somehow responsible. I think either indirectly or directly. I think that during the snowstorm, if they were driving during the snow, maybe Jax was getting a little bit stressed out. He's telling the boys to be quiet because they're all happy from the game and excited for the next day, that he needs to focus on this road. And that he's talking and that he accidentally makes a wrong turn. And he's trying to figure out it back. He's more stressed out now because he doesn't know how to get back. That is when Gary has his schizophrenic episode. Despite being on medicine, he has an episode. And that's when things got worse. That's when Jack got his car stuck. And that's when the boys got out. They realized that, oh my God, Gary's having an episode. So the boys decided to flee and run. Gary is still having his episode. Oh, after a few, maybe he could have calmed down maybe after a few minutes. I don't know. I don't have schizophrenia. I don't know how that works. But say he calmed down after a few hours and then realizes that his friends are gone. He realizes what he's done and he tries to look for them. That's when he finds Ted, but he can't find Ted. But then he finds the three other men. And it's been a few hours even. We're entering maybe early mornings the next day when the families are just about to report the boys missing. That's when Gary finds his three other friends, besides Ted, who's at the trailer, dead. They've all died in the night due to hypothermia. Now, this is actually very accurate because none of the boys had any coats or winter gear on. So it's very easy for them to have died in hypothermia early in the night. Gary, horrified that he pauses as his men. He's terrified what's going to happen. He's going to have to face their family, his own family, what happened. He's going to try to explain, oh my God, I had an episode, I scared them away, and now they're dead. I don't know where Ted is. That's what he's thinking. What do I do now? Now he could have either rid further off into the mountains to maybe find help and go by a new name and escape, or unfortunately, it's possible that he took his own life. That he either ran away further and then eventually succumbed to the elements, or he took his own life by another means necessary at the river. At the river. So that explains what I think may have happened. That's what I think happened. But what about his shoes being in the car trailer? It's possible that after many weeks, he came upon the trailer after running off into the woods. And being in the military, he would know how to survive in the wilderness, you would think. He finds Ted either dead or dying, and he decides to put his own shoes there as he feels remorse. And then he takes his shoes. Maybe Ted's still alive and he's hoping he'll wake up and sees his shoes and he gets help. But he doesn't know what to do. And that's what I think things went wrong. But I truly do believe the key to solving this case is through Gary Mathias. But we'll get to that later. The legacy of this case, the Yuba County Five remains an enigma, one that has haunted families, locals, and investigators for nearly half a century. We're almost entering 50 years since this case has happened. Without new evidence, we may never know why five young men, with their entire lives ahead of them, desultonated mountain road. Theories around, the fact remains a cold as the mountain air that sealed their fate. Now, I truly do believe this case could be solved. We just need to find Gary Mathias. I want you to take a look at him. This is what he looked like at 25. Now, I want you to imagine him adding on 30 years. Now, add up 50 years, so right now he's in his 70s. What would he look like now? If you can add it on, does he look like someone you know? a neighbor, a guy who should beer one time. Do you recognize him? Because they all reported sightings, because even from one of their own family members, that they saw Gary Mathias after the fact. He tried to go after him, but by the time she went to catch up with him, he was gone. So I wanted to imagine, do you think Gary's still alive? And if he does, do you recognize him? Because if his remains are eventually found and confirmed through DNA, and he died similar to the boys, we may have another answer. We now know. But if Gary's still alive, maybe he's seeing this podcast. I don't know. Maybe he is. Maybe he won't. That remains a fact. I truly do believe this case can be solved through finding out truly what happened to Gary Mathias. If he's still alive, then he can give us the answers. He can tell us what happened that night, or maybe even his family can. Someone knows something, and that someone is Gary. He either took it to the grave that night, or he's keeping it alive with him. Either way, Gary is the key to solving this case. Because once we find Gary, I think all the puzzle pieces will fit together and we'll find him. Now, there's actually been a new update to the case. ABC 17 did a story about an author who wrote a book about the case. That book's available on Amazon. You can look that up. It's simply Yuba County Five. And then, along with the family members and including the local man who worked at the sheriff's department, about what they think happened. And the sheriff did agree that for a long time they did focus on Gary. Is it possible they focus on Gary? Is it possible that they missed another lead or another evidence became lost? Possibly, but we don't know. I truly do hope this case can be solved because many of these relatives and siblings of these men are entering their elder years and they're losing hope that they will live to see the day that they finally know what happened to a loved one. For the day that police can say, here's what we know what happened that night. We know this happened, this person was involved, this was responsible, or this is what we can know for sure happened. Case closed. And they can go to their homes knowing they know exactly or have an idea what happened to their loved ones. But as of right now, they're losing that hope. And I'm truly hoping for this day that this case could be solved. I truly do think, once again, once we find Gary Mathias, once we find him, we will find out what happened that night. But will we ever know? I'm not quite sure. Thank you for joining us on Exploring the Unsolved with Melissa. Be sure to subscribe, follow, and leave a review if you'd like to hear more haunted cases like this one. Stay safe, and as always, remember, sometimes truths are stranger than fiction.
Like and subscribe.